well, it's 34 degrees anyway. Today we are 4 people in Tokyo, 1 person in Ho Chi Minh, and we have been discussing European history. Went through history, Greek era, Roman era, Middle Ages, and into recent history, and we've moved on to philosophy. And the starting point is a book written by Uno-san about Confucianism. I tried to summarize that. We discussed it last week. What is it all about? Basically, calmness, consciousness, becoming a peaceful gentleman, and starting with yourself, with your family, and then become a leader through virtue. We discussed in detail last week Confucianism, and this week I would like to move on to Western philosophy. Western philosophy, what is the difference and what are the similarities between Western philosophy and Confucianism? So Western philosophy, if we look at the origins of Western philosophy, it's almost like liberal arts, what Uno-san is always talking about. So the origin it's very broad. Very broad. It has its origins in mathematics, poetry, biology, physics, political science, astronomy. Everything was included in a big philosophy, and it focuses on really big questions. Metaphysical world, so understanding the fundamental nature of the world, the universe, and being. What exists? Do I exist actually, or am I just a figment of my imagination? Je pense donc je suis. It means I think, therefore I am. Is one of the what was it? The French philosopher. Well, we will see him next, but Descartes. Yes, Descartes. A very fundamental approach toward philosophy, where you basically find answers not through empiricism, but through your mind and through reasoning. Basically, so what proves to be here? It's basically the question. Like, for example, if we look at this, okay, what color is this? So I think we all agree that this is orange, right? But do we actually see the same color, or do we just have a shared definition? So is this orange just a matter of definition, or do we actually see the same thing? So there's a lot of fundamental questions that are asked in Western philosophy. But not only that, I mean, there are also philosophers who very much focus on ethical questions, on how to organize the state, how to be a good person, the role of God, very fundamental questions. I was almost oblivious to philosophy as a whole, but I really enjoyed studying it after reading Uno-san's book. What I noticed in Confucianism is that it's very much a road that men should walk in order to become a great man. So follow the learning, the teachings of Confucianism, of Confucius, and you can become a great man. So it teaches you which road to take and which road will bring you to a certain destination. Whereas in Western philosophy, there is more a not so much a road, but typical existentialist questions that play a major role. So metaphysical, is there a God? Is there another God? This is a tongue twister. Epistemology That is another big question. The nature and scope of knowledge. Is the world my experience really what I think it is? Last week we looked at a brief video explaining a concept from Plato that basically revolves around prisoners in a cage. These prisoners have been held in a cage their entire life, and what they see is basically the shadows of the people walking behind them. So they are facing a wall, and there's a fire behind them, and what they see is the shadows of the people around them. So for them, the world is black and white and two-dimensional. Then one of the prisoners escapes, and he gets out of the cage and sees that the world is full of colors and three-dimensional. So what we observe, is that reality, or is it merely the shadows on the wall of the cage? Very fundamental questions, and when you think it through, it has big consequences. Okay, so what is true? How can we find the truth? How do I know I'm right or wrong? And can I ever be certain about anything? Schopenhauer. And value theory, ethics, morality. How do we, for example, the Republic is a book on how we should organize ourselves. There's a lot said about democratic system in Greece and Rome, but actually, if you read the philosophers, they're not so enthusiastic about it at all. Aesthetics. Arts played, and especially drama, theater played a very important role in Athens and also in Rome, but especially in Athens, it was the form of art, and it had a very special role, and people theorized about it, and there are philosophers who actually wrote rules on how to write the best theater. So the answers are, and that is also, I think, a difference between Eastern and Western philosophy is very much based on logic, mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. So it is really, it has to be logical, the reasoning. Deductive, inductive, it doesn't matter, but logic plays a major role. And the true philosopher doesn't mind if the result, as long as it's logically consistent. So giving strong arguments, not falling in the trap of fallacies, plays an important role. So it's not so much a road; it's more of existentialist reasoning, and coming up with the essence, and from there, through logical reasoning, creating a vision of how the world functions. Pythagoras we also already saw last week, or not? No, we didn't see. Oh, okay, Pythagoras. This is actually Socrates is one of the heroes in the Greek philosophy, and but Socrates was not the first philosopher. There were actually a lot of philosophers before him, but he played such an important role as the teacher of Plato, and also related to Aristotle, that there is basically the pre-Socratic and the post-Socratic philosophy. Yes,
this is the first time for me.
So there is this difference. Pythagoras we all know from mathematics, how to calculate the length of the hypotenuse. I don't know exactly what it's Latin. But how do you can calculate the length and the angles of the triangle? But actually, he was a philosopher, and so he was not only concerned with mathematics, but also about how the world functions. So this is an example of the pre-Socratic philosopher, and you can see here that actually he's not only that, like I said, he's a philosopher, but he's interested in mathematics, but he's also influenced by all kinds of beliefs, and he's in religion that plays a part in his thinking and his school. This is one of the key things that where there's the pre-Socratic period and the post-Socratic period. Philosophy, especially prior to the Middle Ages, was very much there in finding the truth. So in this example, you see that Pythagoras had this hypothesis and showed how the world worked, and it seemed to make a lot of sense, like the parallels between mathematics and music. So there is a ratio between the octaves and the length of a column, or the string, and the octaves. So it seems to make perfect sense, but if that doesn't hold true anymore, then the theory breaks. And if once pointed out, then people got shocked, and the messenger got punished. Whereas in post-Socratic philosophy, it was actually encouraged to find and to contradict these theories, and because that's a step to further developing and enhancing and finding the truth. I think that's the core issue in philosophy: finding the truth. What is the truth?
Is known for his beliefs in the transmigration of souls. Pythagoras believed that there was a scale of reward and punishment for the soul after death. He took his ideas from an ancient religious sect associated with Orpheus. It was the Orphics who first developed the concept of the soul and its relationship to the body. In his famous Republic, Plato describes how the soul of Atalanta, famous for her running prowess, returned to earth in the body of an athlete, whilst that of the vile Thersites was trapped in the body of an ape. After several reincarnations, the soul of the true believer could find release from the wheel of birth and achieve eternal peace.
So that's also one of the. So he's really a broad thinker, not only in mathematics and how it relates to nature, and basically mathematics being capable of explaining everything. But on the other hand, there's also these ideas about more or less reincarnation, your soul going from one vehicle to the next, and finally reaching. But after going through many stages and many different lives, you can reach into heaven. Okay, that's enough about Pythagoras. Oh.
Hi, I'm John Green. This is Crash Course World History, and today we're going to talk. It became apparent that France would fall.
What's this?
And so in Britain.
It starts to play automatically? Okay. Alright, so then we're reaching the Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. They are the very, very famous philosophers, and they put not only the groundwork for Western philosophy, but actually Western society as a whole. Way of thinking is very much owed to these three philosophers. They are teacher and students of each other, yet all in their own fields they have contributed to and put a very big fundament under Western society and Western way of thinking. So science, mathematics, ethics, morality, and broad fundamental fields with fearless, rational argument, deduction, regardless of the outcome. So it doesn't matter where you end up, as long as you just follow the rigorous steps of logic. Then it is fine. Socrates. Actually, can I briefly, because I would like to take some notes while I ask this. He was a little bit annoying to most people. He just went around and engaged with people, criticizing basically how society is organized. If a shoemaker can make shoes, then a politician should be able to be effective in ruling the people, but actually in reality that doesn't seem to be very true. And he was very confrontational in his questioning, embarrassing a lot of people, because through his questioning, Socratic questioning, he very much questioned the people, and they very often felt criticized and humiliated through his questioning. He didn't write any books. The reason why we know him is that Plato wrote many books where always Socrates was the star figure in his books. So they knew each other. They were a teacher and student, and but his teaching was very much about ethics and moral theory, and he encouraged people to move away from the materialistic world into finding your soul. That's where you can find true happiness. The path to true happiness was through soul searching and through actually rigorous argument, by being very clear and uncompromising about what's right and what's wrong. So that this was also more of a black and white theory. The arguments there, I think, is a big difference with Confucius, where Confucius is more about enduring, staying calm, not arguing, but agreeing, waiting your time, be more tactical. Whereas Socrates was very direct, and through argumentation, through using your mind, kind of expose the fallacies of other people's behavior and thinking. So that is, I think that's a big difference between Confucianism and Socrates, and I think we can still see the consequences of these philosophies in society. I don't know what came first, if that was already ingrained into Western culture and Eastern culture, but I think their teachings have been very much influencing contemporary Europeans and followers of Confucianism in Japan and China. All right, his student Plato.
Let's suppose that
We find a big parallel, I think, with Confucianism, where basically we should be ruled. We should follow good people, enlightened people, which is also the path that Confucius lays out for us, where we need to become better people before we can actually gain followers. Therefore, it should be the according to Plato, it should be the philosophers, because people are not capable of distinguishing between good people and bad people. Regular people are like a mob, and democracy produces bad leaders because people are not fit to choose. Therefore, society should be ruled by philosophers, and philosophers are thinkers. Why philosophers? Because philosophers are thinkers, and therefore we should put our fate in their hands. So good people should lead the world. That's his message, which is exactly the message I think is we find in Confucianism. So there are differences and similarities between the thinkings and the theories of Plato. I don't think that Confucius says anything about beauty, not that I know of. At least there is a difference between relationships, and there is I think also a difference between Confucianism, because Confucianism is more or less a doxa, as Plato called it. I think nowadays we call it dogma. The Confucian theory is something that has not been rewritten, as far as I understand. It's not been reinterpreted. This is exactly the same teachings as were 2,400 years ago, and they are still being studied literally, not being questioned but followed. And Plato says, well, basically we need to think for ourselves. We need to interpret things for ourselves, and not just follow the teachings of others. So I think that's where there's a difference. But on the other hand, he also sees that people who do think, people who are good, should lead society, which is exactly the same as under Confucianism.
I have one question. Based on your understandings, the teachings of the Confucianism have not been changed.
Right. Yeah.
And all the people, every moment of the history learn from the same languages,
right,
and practice in the same way. Is that your?
Well, I think that Confucianism itself has not changed, but it has been blended with other teachings. For example, in Japan, Confucianism was blended with Buddhism and with other.
Yes, that is also another aspect of the current or Confucianism of every period. But the words which Confucius said, which was written in the book of the Analects, I think it is not; those words were not well structured by the Confucius himself. And it is just a natural dialogue between Confucius and his pupils, disciples, and so that's why, and also the expression itself were very simple, too simple.
Right.
So that's why
interpretation was it.
Right. So that's why there are so many versions of interpretations exist, and the Confucianist after the Confucius discussed about how we can interpret this word like this,
right,
in from the aspect of the way to live in a good way, or from the aspect of the politicians or from the aspect of like the magicians or whatever. So there is also one aspect of the powerfulness of the Confucius words. But on the other hand, it caused huge numbers of a bunch of numbers of the discussion after that.
Right.
So everybody tried to interpret, and everybody tried to insist.
But everybody kept just like the Bible in our society has been the Bible has been rewritten a lot.
The Bible of the Confucianism is the Analects, okay?
Right.
And the Analects itself also reinterpreted by the thousands or so many people. And there are so many interpretations.
But the letter has been did the contents of the writing also change or not?
Not.
No, Bible did change.
So that in the case of Confucianism, every interpretation comes with the original text.
Right.
So that
but the original text remains. I don't know if the original text of the Bible still remains. Actually.
In the case of a Bible of the Christianities, it doesn't exist, right?
No, I don't think so.
And, but in the case of Confucianism, there are, what can I say? But almost all original version exist. Yeah. So and also the one lucky things for the people who live in Asian territories, especially talking about the Chinese people, Taiwanese, and also the Japanese people, all of us using the same Chinese characters, but except the modern Chinese people, the government changed the Chinese character from a complicated version to the simplified version. But anyway, at least the Japanese and the Taiwanese can still read the original one.
Right.
That is a lucky thing for us.
Right. Right. So I understand what you're saying. So basically, you say, well, the letter of Confucius and what he wrote was not really specified and explained and laid out.
No detailed explanation behind that.
Right.
It is a very simple dialogue.
Right.
So that is one good aspect of the Confucianism, because we can interpret in any ways.
Right, but it's also what I very often see in Christian society is that people are arguing with the Bible in their hands and then quoting phrases from the Bible to make their point, basically, and say, okay, this is in the Bible, therefore it's true. That kind of dogmatic thinking, and very often in the Bible is not that consistent. And if you take phrases and you take things out of their context, therefore, very often it's been, I feel, abused to pursue your own political agenda instead of actually thinking for yourself and reasoning. I see there is also a danger in that.
Yes, the same things happen also in Confucianism. And sometimes person A interpreted like this, but person B interpreted in the opposite way.
Right.
Such kind of things happens.
Right.
And huge discussions existed.
Okay. Well, I mean, that in itself, following Socrates, is good, because the path to happiness is to finding the truth through dialogue. And,
well, that is, I think, one of the big difference between the Plato and Confucius. Because Confucius, yeah, of course, he tried to find some kind of a truth of our world, but his way was not the kind of a logical way.
right.
He just tried to practice in the real world, in his real life. He just tried to practice, and he tried to learn. So
that's for me, that's very fascinating, because actually, basically, forget me if I'm wrong, maybe there was a truth behind his thinking, but he made it practical by just, instead of putting out his truth, his vision of the truth, and putting that in the book, he more or less put the path towards reaching the truth. So not teaching about the truth, and this is the difference with Western philosophers. They try to what is true, but more or less, okay, there is a truth, but how can we get people towards the truth is more important than actually.
So in the case of Confucianism, there is no evidence or logics behind his work.
Right.
Nothing.
Right.
So that after the people who was born after Confucius, one of the famous persons was Tuti, and he finally established the Tuti school, and so his interpretation was well accepted by the so many people, because as I said that there are no structures or reasonings behind the words of the Confucius in the analects.
Right.
So that sometimes it is difficult to understand why he says such kind of things.
Right.
So that Tuti tried to restructure why this kind of words appear here in such a kind of situation, because the Confucius idea or logic is like this. Behind his word, such kind of structure exists. So that's why this word comes from here,
Right.
and or this word also comes from
That's
here.
taking very big steps, isn't it? Very big steps.
Right. So and he tried to analyze not only the from the words of the Confucius, but also combining other variety of the philosophy or ideas other than Confucius, like Taoism also, and not Buddhism, but and also variety of. So just after the Confucius, Chinese people have deep of the philosophical activities. That was said the hundreds of schools period. So that means 100 sort of the philosopher appeared after the Confucius. So Tuti tried to also think about all of these ideas, and so he tried to understand the logics or evidence or justification of the Confucius ideas. And eventually he wrote the books about his ideas. And so that book is actually very logical. And he tried to restructure the world of the Confucianism from the words of the Confucius. And so that's why it was easier for the many people to understand logically. So that's why the Tuti school's idea or teachings were well accepted. And in the Han Dynasty, the king decided to hire his idea, Tuti school's idea, as the national kind of teachings, and every the officer have to learn. And also they decided to do the entrance exam to the office. And everybody had to learn.
I see.
this
I
idea.
heard about that. Yeah,
Yeah.
every civil servant had to
Right.
pass this kind of exam if you want to become a civil servant, right?
And that became the big pressure or motivate the many the people who would like to be the officer of the government. But there was a good aspect and a bad aspect. That is also the same thing with the current examination system of the university. Now, the many people tried to study the philosophy of the Confucius through the interpretation of the Tuti. But so that is a good aspect because the idea of the Confucius spread rapidly. But the bad aspect was because the contents of the explanation was too much structured and logical. So that the original teachings of Confucius was the practice in the daily life, in every moment. But the Tuti school's idea was spread just for the remembering the interpretations to take the exams.
Right.
On the other hand, they forget about the practice in the daily life. So that kind of a movement is very similar with the Martin Luther's the Puritanism movement. And in the society of the Christianity, the Roman society, Christianity organization were too big and they had a huge power. And on the other hand, they almost forget about the two teachings of Christianity. So Martin Luther insisted that we have to go back to the Bible.
Right.
We only have to believe the word of the Jesus, and we forget about every other thing. So such kind of things also happen in the society of Confucianism. So after the Tuti, about maybe 50 years or 100 years, another nobleman appeared. His name was the Wang Yanmin. He was originally the general of the military force.
He was in Unison's book.
Yes. And he was the great practitioner. How can I say? And he suffered with the very in a variety of the situation, and he himself suffered so much. And every moment he was ordered from a king to go to the isolated areas to occupy or calm down the situation or whatever. Until the very last moment of his life. So at the very last trial or operations. At that moment, he was in a heavy ill, and he said to the king that I cannot accept your order because my situation is not good. But the king forced him to go, and eventually he was carried by the other soldiers, and he went to some place, but he could not get back to he passed away on the way from that area to the hometown. But anyway, during such kind of a difficult situation, he think his the Confucius words several hundred times. And so he insisted, we have to only trust the word of Confucius himself in the analytics. We have forget about any kind of interpretations without the practice. That is just learning for the exam. So, and so that the teachings of Onyamin school is very, very practical. And do fast, then understandings or realization comes up.
Right.
That is the fundamental idea.
Right. Follow the road.
Yeah.
Follow the road, and then you will reach your destination. Just follow the road.
Yeah. So because the teachings of Confucius is the very practical order or rules.
But I really maybe it's not fair to say this, but I really feel that this is a deep-seated root of culture in Japan still.
Yeah. Not only the Banyamin. So in the case of Japan, in the society of the Confucianism, those are the two big the interpretations of the word of the Confucius. And in Japan, same with in China, both of the teachings were taught. But the Tokugawa shogunate hired the teachings of the Tuti. The situation was the same in China. It is good to learn, easy to learn, because there is a textbook, very structured, easy to learn, easy to teach, and so and also the Tokugawa Ieyasu declared that we are going to abandon the sword. From this moment, we are going to govern this society with literature in a peaceful way. So that soon after, every samurai lost their way to get a better position by their sword. So soon after, only one way to get a better position in a samurai society is to learn the Tuchi's teachings. But some people also taught. Some people taught the teachings of
which period of it? Tokugawa. So that's around
16,000 to 1867. About 250 years. So that was one of the reasons why there was no big the battle between the samurais. There is also several the political strategy of the Tokugawa Ieyasu to avoid the battle between samurais. But one of the big the reason why the Tokugawa shogunate could establish such kind of a peaceful moment was hiring the idea of the Confucianism and Tuchi interpretations. Yes.
So that's
and also during this 250 years, the Confucianism, Tuchi's idea and the Wanyamin school's idea, and also the Buddhism and the Shintoism were mixed up during this 250 years.
Right.
That was we say Japanized Confucianism. And both Chinese and Japanese people read the same characters in the analects, but we differently interpret it and also the practice in daily life.
The Tuti interpretation. How come that this remained and became such a strong foundation for the teachings of Confucius? I mean, have there been other interpretations that have taken over from the Tuti interpretation, or has that remained the major interpretation of Confucius next to what's his name, General Jiang Zemin or Banyamin? Where Banyamin is not really an interpretation, but more or less an appeal to just stick with the original teachings of Confucius. Those have remained more or less intact, or what? Or have they been rewritten, revised? I mean, how come that it sounds like this has been, like even in China and in Japan, has been has taken the major role of the interpretation of application.
If I have to explain about the difference between the interpretation of Confucianism between China and Japan, one good example is there is one good example of the interpretation of Tobu theory. That is the fundamental idea of Confucianism is if the Lord lost the virtue, right virtue to govern the people, the other people can defeat the king, and people can, have the new king. So that that means if the king was, and that interpretation came from one of the famous book in the five classics. That book, the name of that book was Shunju, spring period, spring and autumn. That was the history book, and it says tells us about which king lives and governs the nation in what kind of way. And King Tao and King Wu defeated the previous king, because the previous kings were very severe to the people. And based on the interpretation of Confucius, which was written in that book, it is okay. So if that rule were allowed, if so I can say every moment every king had a threat to be
Overthrown.
Right.
But who decides what is virtuous and what is not virtuous?
It is obvious. So whether that the kings did the good, what they say, governing of the society.
But who decides that? Is that the people who decide that, or who decides that?
Well, it is not, of course, the law of the nations, so that there is no clear criteria. Yeah, everybody. Sometimes people thinks, but sometimes other, maybe the opponent of the kings. So
right, I think that's a very much a political instrument. No?
So that always that interpretation were used in they say what they would like to use.
Right.
So that's why if we look at the history of China, every dynasty is have been changed in every 10th or every 100 years.
So that is one of the explanations why we still have a royal family that exists already for thousands of years.
So that's why always the justification of the new dynasty was because we were governed by the bad kings.
Right.
Every moment the justification was the same.
Right.
But in the case of Japan, also there are so many Confucianists in Japan, and eventually those the Confucianists never reached the conclusion that we never allowed that idea, that interpretation of the Confucius world, because we had an emperor, and it lasted for a long time, and if we allow such kind of interpretation, it is also allowed us to defeat the emperor.
Right.
That kind of idea never allowed. So that was the conclusion.
But that's actually a little bit surprising,
Yes.
Because there was a major other power source of power with Bakufu. How come they never allowed for this interpretation to take control and actually eliminate the emperor and take 100% control?
Oh yeah, that's a question which we discussed during the lunchtime with san
Okay.
And at the very first moment, when the samurai class took the power to govern this nation, was after the Heian period, about 12,094. That was the moment when Genji,
800 years ago.
about 800 years ago. Yeah, Genji took the right to rule this nation instead of the emperor or the imperial court. But at that moment, the style of the delegation of the power from imperial court to the samurai class was the issuing the declaration and order from imperial court to the samurai class. At that moment, Minamoto no Yoritomo, I order you to be the general of the military force to govern these nations. So always the shogunate were apparently had been working for the imperial court under the order from emperor. So that the emperor families last about 2,668 years in Japan, apparently.
Sorry for my ignorance, but did the emperor actually have his own troops, his own military?
At the first moment, yes. Or even the emperor himself fought at the very early stages before the Minamoto no Yoritomo.
Right.
And also another big battle between the imperial court and the samurai general or the Hakufu was the south-north imperial court issues at the beginning of the Muromachi period. At that moment, because of some reasons, imperial court split into the two courts, north and south. And at that moment, the emperor himself fought with the power of the samurai class also. And eventually, the south was
Prevailed.
defeated,
Defeated.
and the north took the power. But based on the interpretation of the Japanese history, the South Imperial Court was had the right to be in the position of the Imperial Court. But anyway, yes, at the first moment, the very first moment of the history, the emperor himself was also the soldier. Yes.
The very first moment of history?
Very first moment.
What do you mean the very first moment?
2,668 years. Jinmu, Emperor Jinmu established this company, these nations.
Okay. So right.
They are the emperor and also the top of the soldiers, and he also, of course, had his military force. Yes.
I see. So that's marked as the beginning of history. I see. Okay. All right. So. There are the interpretations. There are the original texts. The original text is also very widely interpretable. But they have remained a very important role, just like the Bible in Western society. And yeah, the parallel with Protestantism, I can easily follow. as a schism within the church. So I think that one of the big differences here is indeed between in philosophy is the path and the destination. I can see that the path is important, whereas philosophers in Greece were more interested in what they thought was the truth, and how basically how we could arrive at this truth by constantly questioning everything, and thereby becoming a better person. Virtue plays a similar role in both sides. But
the big difference is, just Honda mentioned, emperor family continue more than 2,000 years.
Yes.
But this is only Japan. Okay?
Right.
Japanese protect those emperor's family for 2,000 years.
Right.
This is very exceptional. So Japanese is very different from the other rest of the world people.
Right.
How do you think about this? I wrote many books, 17 books for 1 year, 6 months ago. I'm writing about world democracy and regimes, people living there, compared with those people. The Japanese people, I recognize Japanese people are different from the rest of the world. But I don't know why they are so different. Maybe one reason is the family of emperors and more than 2,000 years will continue. Why Japanese people protected the family for more than 2,000 years? Different from China, different from Europe. How to think about it?
Okay, so my first thought, my first idea that I get when you ask that question is also in the context of philosophy. In Western philosophy, it's very much not dogmatic. So it's truth finding. It's the individual that takes a central role in everything. In Eastern philosophy, it's more following the road that have others that will bring you somewhere. That means that you are not the primary. You are not the most important figure in this world. Whereas in philosophy, you are. So basically, you take it, and in that background, there is much more. There's much less. People are much less prone to following, and much more individualistic and much more dialectic than in Japanese society. So I think that is also like explainable from the difference in philosophy.
But why Japanese continue to keep emperor's family for 2,000 years? I don't understand. Usually Europe, China, everybody.
So we were just talking about this. So
everybody periodically kills them all.
Right.
But why Japanese people, they didn't do that? Still, I don't understand why. I can't explain. So that one reason is, okay, that conservative tradition generate dignity. Okay, this I understand. And so Japanese have put more than 2,000 years conservative, and they keep tradition. So beforehand, okay, not now, beforehand, Japanese people have dignity, okay, especially before World War II or Edo era, but not now. Right. But Japanese, I try to give them suggestion. Okay, you have tradition. You should be proud of your history. But why Japanese keep those kind of history in the past? This is I don't understand. Why? Why? Currently, Japanese emperor, everybody try not to reveal his private life. Okay? They don't want to touch him. But from his when he born and die, he's all the way around. He's just playing God, right?
Right.
And every
The emperor, right?
generation, yeah.
But people are comfortable with that because they are born into the system.
But why?
Well, it's only if you
I want
from,
to get
from
opinion
your.
from a European perspective.
I think ego plays an important role. I don't know if there are many people who feel compelled to actually challenge the role of the emperor and become and overtake that, or feel entitled to be the emperor.
What do you mean, title?
And entitled to be the emperor. If you look at it from Confucianism, and I realize this is thin, but basically you need to follow the path to become a gentleman, a big man, a wise man, and then you can become a leader. But in Western society, it is more about finding the truth, and that gives a certain kind of entitlement between being right and wrong, and having there is a and for example, in Plato's world, there is a superior. The philosopher is of superior wisdom, therefore they should lead. That is basically not related to birth or anything, not about how the world is. It's basically based on the virtues of that person at that time. Doesn't matter where he comes from. It is basically this person is of superior learning and superior wisdom, and therefore he should lead. In Confucianism, there is this system of things, and you grow into this system. You follow this path. And there is not not an entitlement because I'm right or wrong. Basically, you learn to endure. You learn to stay calm. You follow this path.
Okay.
You develop wisdom.
Somebody asked emperor. Okay, somebody asked emperor, what kind of TV program do you watch? Okay, his answer is, I can't tell the truth, because if I'm going to say for you, I'm going to say which program I'm watching. It's called bad influence for Japanese people, right? So he can say which my favorite program.
Right.
This is none of the world people say that. This is very strange, you know.
Yeah, I think the current situation in Japan, especially in terms of the emperor, there are a variety of reasons why the people cannot express or, show their positions or opinions in a public place.
Right.
One of the reasons is of course, still the existence of the emperor is a saint and a holy existence. Somehow, most of the people still believe, and me too. And another reason was, which was created after the World War II by the GHQ, that because the power of the emperor was too strong before the World War II.
Right.
That's why, simply most of the soldiers could fight, even suicide himself under the name of the emperor. And also apparently, so that kind of situation was very terrible and not understandable from the Western peoples. So that's why the GHQ tried to, spoil such kind of belief of the Japanese people by the brainwash after World War II during the 7 years of occupation period. So as a result of that, another second reason is if somebody says something about the emperor, he or she may be somehow under the effect of the militarization. That is the second reason. So both on the both reason, nobody can explain their idea clearly, especially in the public place or in front of the TV camera. So
I think this is very strange, but if you're going to recommend, we're going to show whole day of emperor's life, but right-wing people criticize me, but I don't know why. But this is sort of, culture Japanese has. What kind of culture? Okay, I'm just today, let's see. Japanese people education system is in the past, after World War II, many people, they are positioning right-wing or left-wing. Neutralized person, very few, right? So this caused the Japanese people biased, many type of diversified, situation now. But I wanted to say, but who is Japanese people? This is my question. Very strange from the rest of the world. Very different people. How different? Which is, I don't know, but you are familiar with Japanese people. So this is my question, especially for the kind of Sonoda explained for you for the past 1 hour. This is what I wanted to know from non-Japanese people. What is this? Because Japanese they cut it out communication from outside Japanese people. Japanese people never speak out opinion to the country's people. But those people different from your country, from European people, from American people, very different. But we can contribute something for the world people. But the Japanese people don't know that, and European people don't know that. So we need to clarify. Okay, Japanese government try to sell high-speed rail to Asian countries. Stupid. China is more better than Japanese. But still Japanese people try to sell hardware and computer programs, something like that. But Japanese moral software is very, very advanced compared with the world people. And so sort of things we can contribute something. But I think you're most closest person in the Japanese, so I wanted to get your opinion. What's the difference?
What's the difference between Japanese person?
Yeah, but usually, like Sonoda, me, and Kimoto Takashi, we never talking about kind of issues. Even with Japanese people, we don't talk about that. But we try to consider for deep discussion. We should have Japanese people, they should have something different. So if we want to, we are more effective to the European people, more effective to American people, but both parties, they don't know. So what is it? If this kind of situation going on, maybe 10 years later, 20 years later, Japanese try to wage war because communication gap. They cannot negotiate, they can talk with American, European people, Russian people. This is the same thing happened before World War II. This is my, feeling. And also Japanese newspaper, TV is very much biased, just focus on domestic. And I told American newspaper journalists, why not you try to report world news? But they said Japanese people, everybody don't interested in it. So that's the reason why they just only focus on Japanese domestic news. But this is wrong. But Japanese have something else. So I told you, emperor's family, Japanese people keep this kind of strange, character, strange culture they have. But what is it? Big issue.
Big question.
This morning I talked with Sonoda. Why don't you prepare something next month? And he prepared today Chinese, Japanese, what's the difference among two nation people, and he prepared very well. But still, I want to know who are they.
Okay. So if I I'm thinking about this as we are discussing this now, but okay.
This morning I introduced the one framework to understand the difference between Chinese people and the Japanese people, which was introduced by Arnold Toynbee in his study of history.
Toynbee?
Toynbee.
Toynbee.
Arnold J. Toynbee.
No, Arnold Toynbee. You should know. Arnold Toynbee. The famous
Famous
philosopher.
Yes.
Arnold Toynbee. Toynbee.
Arnold J.
Toynbee.
Toynbee. To distinguish with his son, so we often put the J between Arnold and
Okay.
yeah, and also there are several famous books, but one of the famous books was a study of history. And in that book, he explained about the framework, what can I say, using Herodianism versus zerotanism. Zerotism versus Heroditianism.
Okay,
Yeah,
so those are terms that I'm not familiar with.
One framework.
Herodian.
Greece philosopher.
When the
Herodis.
Jewish culture was attacked by the Greek cultures,
Right.
the Jewish people
King
were
Herodis.
split into the two party. One sort of people try to reject the invasion of the Greek culture into
Right.
their society. They were called Heroditians.
Right.
Another party will try to accept the importing the new cultures from Greek. They are called the Zerotism.
So King Herodes then, or not? Herodianus.
Yes.
So King Herodes was a figure in the Bible, but that was around
Yes.
zero. Oh,
Yes.
oh, okay.
This one.
Okay, but anyway, so we have Heroditians and
Zerotism.
Zealot.
Zealot.
Oh, okay. Yeah. With has it anything to do with fanatism? Because with zealots, with fanatical.
ください。これいいですね。